Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sharpest CDL podcast. It is here. The long off season is finally over. It is time for week one, week one preview. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host at CDLMetrics. How you doing?
Doing well. Just finished up the season preview pod. It was a good kind of refresher and way to preview all the teams and whatnot. We talked about the CDL points contest, if you're interested in doing that. If you're starting with this pod, maybe go back and watch that first season preview and then jump back into this one. Because, this one we're talking week one matches, and we're going to go 9-0 or whatever it is on picks, definitely.
I don't even know how many games there are.
I think it's 3 each day. So we're going 9-0.
Yes.
We're going perfect. We know all the answers to the test already, and we haven't even seen a match yet. Yeah.
Yes. That being said, I will watch this weekend, but that being said, it's going up against conference championship games. There was a better weekend they could have picked this. Next weekend would have been perfect, but they just decided not to. So, anyways, moving on here, match previews here. First match on Friday. I believe it's at 3 o'clock because that is the standard Call of Duty time. Only 3 hours before a bunch of college conference championship games for college football. Optic versus the Riyadh Falcons. This is their first time in the league as Riyadh. Optic minus 1,600 on the money line. Riyadh plus 700. Optic minus 2.5 plus 100. Riyadh plus 1.5 minus 138. I don't think we have any spreads for any of this stuff. We talked a little bit about this in the preview. You have Pred and you have Celium. And you have Kismet, who is actually a world champion. He did win whatever they call it, Call of Duty League Championship. Won it with the Subliners a couple of years ago. Celium's obviously a world champ too. Pred is... No, he won it with Optic. You have 3 world champions on, just champions. They don't call them world champions anymore. You have that on your team, and you can't win a game against this Optic team. I don't know. But can you punch through? I don't know. What are your thoughts on this?
It's tricky, right? This is the first match of the year. We have seen Optic in the preseason be absolutely dominant. They won that online 16-team Monster Energy Invitational, or whatever they're calling it. And they did it in dominant fashion. The grand finals was a little close, but they 3-0'd everybody else. And Riyadh, I think, flamed out pretty quick. But yeah, you mentioned it. This team has solid players on it. Will they be an above-average team? Maybe not. I think they'll finish somewhere in the middle of the pack at the end of the year. And yeah, it all just depends on how well I think Celium and Pred and Kismet all work together, because those 3, I can't remember being on paired up at all in recent years. Celium's obviously been on phase for the last several years, but I'm not sure if Pred and Kismet have ever been on the same team. But they're all quality players. And yeah, I think they could definitely take a map off of Optic. If I had to pick a plus 2.5 or minus 2.5 here, I would take Riyadh at plus 2.5. Yeah, I just think they're competitive enough to at least win one of those first 3 maps. I think Optic are by far the best team in the league right now. A sweep is obviously, very possible here, but I don't think Riyadh is the bottom of the barrel team that you have to worry about getting swept regularly. So Riyadh ever so slightly, but no strong feelings in this game. And I probably won't have strong feelings for most of these games this weekend, but still interesting to preview. Yeah, Pred revenge game, that's the big storyline in this one. Could he have a bounce back year? I think he could. Maybe this game suits him better with the more fluid movement, whatnot. But yeah, with the way Optic look lately, it's going to be hard to take them down.
Yeah, I think that's a theme here for this week, is that we have so little data on a lot of these teams. Riyadh Falcons definitely one of them. Optic's a team, we have no idea how good this team is. So the thing is, for a lot of these bets, anytime I'm I don't know what the best play is here, I'm just going to pass on it. 100%. It's honestly not worth it. There's so many other better things to bet this weekend with college football and the NFL. Again, I'm happy Cloud is back. I can't wait to watch it. But, with a lot of these, it's I don't know if some of this is not bettable. It's just, okay, yeah, maybe Riyadh is, maybe they can cover +1. Maybe they can cover +2.5. Maybe, I don't know. But do I really have a strong conviction that, they're not 60 points worse in hard point. They're only 50? No, I don't have that. I have a strong conviction of that. So we're going to leave things alone for at least this week, maybe even next week potentially, and we'll go from there. But next up, Ravens versus Breach. This one is interesting. Pretty even. Breach is slightly favored over Ravens. Minus 138 to plus 100, minus 1.5 plus 162, plus 1.5 minus 225. Breach just favored down the board here. Again, this is yes, Breach should be favored. Carolina has a couple more rookies, which I prefer, but I don't know. Again, this is one I really don't have many strong feelings on. How about you?
Yeah, no, this one I think just based on what the futures market looks like, this seems like it's priced pretty accurately. Like Boston looked like they're probably a slightly better team. I would say they are just looking at the two rosters. But the big thing is, yeah, like Ravens have two rookies on their team. Right now they're projected to finish 11th in the league. So, yeah, probably not making champs. But the thing when you have two rookies is that you could have a really good team and not know it yet, or it maybe doesn't show up right away in the season, but once these guys get some reps under their belt and this team starts to figure it out, yeah, maybe they're an average team, or maybe they're 8th or 7th or something in that realm instead of 11th or 12th. So Boston, I feel pretty good about where they're projected. They're on the 8th, 9th. There may be a toss-up to make champs as we sit here in the preseason trying to figure out where these teams shake out. They bring a lot of players back from the team they had last year, which I really liked. I was on Boston a lot last year. I think the price here is pretty fair. If more about these rookies that Carolina has, Craze and Lurks, and you buy them and you think they're solid players, like, I don't know. I don't think it'd be crazy to take Carolina and be like, yeah, they're just the straight up better team, minus 1.5 at whatever price that is.
Yeah.
Like you could talk yourself into that as well. I like the continuity on Boston. I think that's why they're favored. They should be a solid team all year just based on the roster they have. Snoopy, really good player. He's been with that organization for a few years now. And yeah, I think he can sometimes handle it himself in some situations. So I think that gives Boston the edge here, but I do hope that this is a close match because we need at least one or two close matches this weekend to kick things off. But yeah, I think it's pretty close to a toss-up like they have it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Again, I'm no strong conviction on this one. That's a pass for me. No strong conviction means we're not betting it. Match 3. This one's a little more interesting here. FaZe, Thieves, a relatively large favorite here. Minus 300 versus FaZe, plus 225. Thieves, minus 1.5, minus 125 on the money line. Vegas, FaZe, plus 1.5, minus 110. Again, Thieves favored in all three modes, except hard search is they're a bit smaller favorites in that. This one actually moved a little bit. I remember looking at this line earlier, and it had FaZe plus 1.5, plus 110. So it's down to minus 110. Not a huge move, but a move. This, if you had said, hey, guess what? Vegas is going to be like, you're going to get plus 1.5 at minus 110 or plus 110. People, a year ago, people were like, that's insane. There's no way. There's no team that you could ever make FaZe that small of that big of an underdog against. Mm-hmm. And here we are. And the thing is, it's so weird because Thieves have looked so underwhelming. Like, they have not been their dominant self either. But FaZe have also been very non-dominant as well. So, what's your take? I think the play here is just FaZe. But then that being said, though, they play FaZe and Thieves played in that second tournament, and Thieves won 3-1. They covered that spread. And Now, it was close. It was like the map 4 was 250 to 240, so it was very close. But still, though, tell me why the play here isn't just putting something on FaZe plus 1.5 and just watching this game.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you there. I do think this, based on where these teams are in the futures market and stuff, like, they're definitely a tier apart, right? Like, Thieves are a step above. But generally, when I'm thinking of prices in that sort of, okay, this team is one tier ahead of this team, I'm thinking more of like they're minus 200 on the money line, not minus 300. Now you're talking like they're a step above and then some, and maybe that extra little juice is from that recent series that we saw. And anytime we get that, where it's last week we saw these two teams face off, it was a very obvious win for one of those teams, maybe a blowout, maybe convincing, whatever it is, and then maybe they meet at the major the next week. Those prices go up. We just saw this match. Generally, I like taking the team that struggled and just saying, hey, the market should not move that much off of one match. I know they played each other and it went the other way, but like sometimes the market can move a lot in 1 week. And it should move some, like that. It's definitely a data point that shows that, yes, Thieves got it done in a fourth map. They are the better team. Winning in a map 4 is probably the most likely outcome of anything. A Thieves 3-1. But yeah, FaZe have good players. I'm sure they're in the lab trying to figure out what maps they should go into this opening weekend with. They have a couple tough games here. So I think they can get to a map 5. Can they win? Absolutely. Like, they definitely could. I think plus 225 is a decent enough price too if you're more interested in that. It's just tough because we haven't seen it from them at either of those preseason tournaments. But like you said, like Thieves didn't really show up at either of those either. Both of these teams might be just figuring things out as they go. And if that's the case, I think we could have a really tight series that goes back and forth. Yeah, I lean Thieves to win probably. I do think you have to keep them as the favorite, but I think FaZe can definitely make this interesting.
Yeah, I think so. But that being said, though, FaZe has looked pretty rough.
Yeah.
Like, FaZe has not looked good. So every moment I want to put something on the plus 1.5, I'm also just, they haven't looked that good. So I don't know. It's also, this is a BZ revenge game, I guess.
Yeah, BZ
so
versus Simp. It's going to be weird.
Yeah. It's going to be a weird game. I might just want to watch this. I want to put something on this, but I think the play is FaZe, but I could be wrong. Maybe this is not this is not last year's FaZe. This is not your grandparents' FaZe. Saturday, first match on Saturday. We've got Toronto Koi versus Miami Heretics. Toronto minus 200, Heretics plus 150. Toronto minus 1.5 plus 110. Heretics plus 1.5 minus 150. Toronto's look pretty good. They were pretty solid in that tournament. Miami did not look pretty good. Their team pretty much got gutted from last year. I think Toronto might be the play here. Maybe that minus 1.5 is looking a little tempting. But again, this is not a strong conviction. This is like a, hey, maybe put something on here and watch it. That being said, this is the same time as the SEC Championship game. Again, this is the theme of this week is we're watching COD. We get COD back again. We're watching it. It's great to have it back, but like at the same time, it's just kind of there's a lot of unknowns so far this year. We really don't know a lot about a lot of these teams, and I think we'll know a lot more very soon. But I have very few strong convictions here on this one. What do you think?
Yeah, so like I said with that previous game is like we think Toronto is a tier above Miami. Yeah, in my head, they should be like minus 200. And here they are right at minus 200. Miami plus 150. Seems about right. Both of these teams are more or less the same from what they had last year. Real now on Toronto and rookie Trakes on Heretics. But Heretics still have a super who came in last year and really just supercharged this team towards the end of the year. They really picked things up. So that Super Rencor Metals, that trio being together is nice to have. I love when teams hold their core together as best as they can. Trakes, I believe, not Spanish, but I think he's from like Argentina. So you still have an all Spanish-speaking team, not all Spaniards, but pretty close nonetheless. So love to see that from Miami. And yeah, Toronto should just be a solid team all year. I think you definitely have to make them the favorites. I think minus 200 is pretty close to what they should be. Joe Deceives had a phenomenal year last year. He's catapulted into that number one spot on this team. I think he really leads this team in slaying most games. He's a very solid player. Kleenex obviously has his pop-off moments. Insight, good enough AR. And then, yeah, we know Real is also a solid player. So solid players all around in this game. I think Toronto have the edge. They've shown it in the preseason. They've been solid, what we expect. Yeah, stay away from me, but I do expect Toronto to come out with the W here.
Yeah, I think so too. I agree with that as well. Maybe there's some value in some of those lines. Match 2, Vancouver versus Paris Gentlemates. Look at that number, 2,000. Minus 2,099. I do not think we've seen that big of a number in a week one forever, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't know. It's big.
Like, you see that number, and minus 2.5, minus 110. Like, it's just like they're favorites to sweep. And this is a week one. Like, that usually, yeah, a couple weeks in, maybe week 3, yeah, you see that. Usually not even in major 1. Usually it's major 2 before you start seeing lines like that, but we're already here. So crazy how this year is going. But they deserve it. Like, this team is really good. Like a solid, we talked about it in the preview pod, a solid stacked team here for that. Yeah, I think the minus 2.5 is a pretty fair play here. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to argue against it with how they've looked in the preseason. They definitely look like a top 3 team. The big question mark is, are they on that level of optic already? Maybe, because if they are, that's huge for them. But the thing with Surge is like, Surge are projected to be the worst team in the league this year, but Gwyn is on this team. We know Gwyn is a solid player. He carried the Royal Ravens last year in their wins. If he had a little more help, I really think Ravens could have had a better end to their season, but they really flamed out pretty hard. So you have him, Lunars, who was on that LAG team last year. Like, they were not good, but he at least has some experience. Maybe him paired up with Gwyn can work. And then 2 rookies, Abe, who featured on Toronto, I think, briefly last year. And then, some guy named Legend, who I don't really know much about. But that being said, like, you made the point of, this price is crazy for a week 1 game. I want to say, like, Vegas Falcons last year were in this sort of range of, they were 7-1 or 8-1 to win their first match. And I don't think this Surge team is nearly as bad as that week 1 Vegas team last year. So to me, if I have to take something, I'd rather play the Vancouver plus 2.5, as crazy as it is. But I have no confidence at all in that pick whatsoever. So hopefully Vancouver can make it somewhat interesting. But don't be surprised if Paris just come out and do what they do, because right now they look like the hottest team in the league.
A couple things I will say about that. The with Vancouver, like with you mentioned the Falcons last year, Vegas Falcons last year, and actually that's a very good point. I had forgotten a bit about that. What I will say though is that with the Falcons, they was a team of challenge. It was a challengers team. It was literally a challengers team. They were not a team of CDL players. A lot of these players on Vancouver are CDL players. A lot of them, there's 4 players total. So there are CDL players on this team. There were not really CDL players on that Vegas team. That being said, though, they are potentially playing against one of the top teams in the league. Legend or whatever. He's the Halo one, I think. He's the one who's coming back from Halo, I believe. Mm-hmm. But that's not, everybody's, he's great in Halo, he's going to be great here, but that's not how that works. We talk about, there's the whole thing with Michael Jordan went from basketball to trying to play baseball. That didn't work out too well. So now, again, obviously not the same thing, but there is a learning curve here. And just because he's good at Halo is not the same thing as Call of Duty. Definitely not the same thing. Call of Duty is a lot faster paced. And just because you're good in Halo doesn't mean you're going to be good in Call of Duty. I could play Halo or Call of Duty, not particularly amazingly, but not at a competitive level. So I'm leaning towards, but the thing is that you think this Paris Gentlemates team is that good, and I think maybe they might actually be that good. I don't think it's necessarily a bet. I think betting on Paris isn't necessarily, I think people are assuming that the bet on Paris is a bet against Vancouver, but I think it's more a bet on Paris, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's fair. Paris, I will say with Paris, like that first preseason tournament, that 16-team online invitational, like they weren't perfect there, and like they weren't 3-0ing teams regularly. And Surge did get a win in that series, and they played a CDL team. They did lose to a Challengers team, but then they beat Breach 3-1, and then they only lost to Royal Ravens 3-2. Now, Ravens aren't projected to be a great team either, but like the fact that they beat a CDL team and then turned around and took Ravens to a map 5, it's just proof that like the teams that are 11th and 12th this year are not going to be like just absolute cupcakes. Like they'll be somewhat competitive even against these elite teams. Remember Vegas Falcons last year, we were like, will they win a map ever? And eventually they did, and they made some roster moves, and they actually looked half decent at one point last year, but early in the season, it was really rough. So I just think this price is a little steep, just considering it's the first Saturday, it's the first weekend. Maybe Vancouver Surge are like the 7th best search team, and they just start to pluck off half the searches they play, and they cover the spread or something like that. So we'll see. Yeah, I don't have strong convictions. I did look up last year when we recorded week 1's pod. Falcons played Ravens in their first match. They were plus 550 on the money line, and Ravens were viewed as like a middle-of-the-pack team to start last year, and then they were plus 400 against Miami on the second day of games. So I guess Miami was not considered to be as good as Carolina, but plus 400, plus 550, Surge here, plus 750. But again, we're viewing Paris in higher regard than Ravens and Heretics at this time last year. So pretty fairly priced, I'd say. It's tough
Yeah.
to make an argument, but yeah.
No, that's very fair. All right, match 3 on Saturday, G2 versus Cloud9. G2 minus 200, Cloud9 plus 150. G2 minus 1.5 plus 120, Cloud9 plus 1.5 minus 163. And then G2 just kind of favored down the line. Yeah, Mamba, I watched a little bit of that tournament. Mamba looked really good, and this G2 team just looked really good as well. So I picked G2 here. Maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, I am more on the Cloud9 side here. And this is one that I don't feel super strongly about, but just it's more to do with what the futures preview looks like. And like we had a price on a match earlier that was Toronto versus Miami, minus 200 plus 150. And like you look at the futures, that makes sense, right? Toronto are in that sort of next tier of teams. They're maybe fifth right now, but wouldn't be surprised if Toronto are maybe better than FaZe to start the year with how FaZe have looked. So you're talking about a top 5, top 4 team against a Miami team that is clearly in that next group down, I'd say, with G2. And honestly, with Cloud9, like the win totals between these two teams are not that different. Their odds to make champs, not that different. Like, to me, they're in the same bucket. I think G2 should be favored, especially based on how they've looked in the preseason tournaments, but more like minus 150 or somewhere in that range as opposed to minus 200. So I do think Minnesota should be favored, but Cloud9 has a solid team. We didn't really talk about them much yet. Afro, Beans, Mac, and Vivid, 4 CDL vets, a couple Brits, a couple Americans. That's a fun little mix. And some guys who have shown some promise over the last couple years. Could they compete with a team of Estriel, Kremp, Mamba, and Skies? Yeah, I don't see why they couldn't. So if I was making the odds for this, I would just shrink these odds a little bit, tighten them up a little. But yeah, I like Cloud9 here. Not to win, but I think they definitely have a shot to do so given the plus 150. So that's where I lean. But I'm a Minnesota fan, so I don't know. I'm always wrong about their games.
But Cloud9 didn't look particularly great, not inspiring. G2 actually did stuff. So
Yes, yeah.
yeah, I think minus 200 is a bit low, but that's me. There's no third match on Saturday. There's only 3. There's no fourth. There's only 3. So now we're on to Sunday now. CDL Sunday, Riyadh versus Thieves. Thieves are minus 1200 on the money line. Riyadh plus 600. Thieves minus 2.5 plus 120. Riyadh plus 2.5 minus 163. Thieves favored in all 3 game modes. Can't say I disagree with that. Yeah, Riyadh seems like they should be a better team than they are. Again, on paper, they didn't look particularly great in the Invitational, but again, we'll see how they look against Optic, right? I think one of the things you could look at is if they show some life against Optic, just immediately bet Riyadh here, and they could do something, right? Thieves have looked a little underwhelming here, especially if they look a little underwhelming against FaZe. Just like 100% go, right? That's the thing. I don't really have much to say here, but I think I'm looking to fade Thieves a little bit. I don't think they've got it figured out right now, at least not yet. Maybe there might come a time when Thieves is a terrifying team to play against in this. Like when you see a wrap-up lineup of Scrap, Hydra, and Abeezy, yeah, that's terrifying. But at this point, I'm not seeing that raw power right now. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally buy that. And I think we both would agree that, like, Riyadh could be, like, the 6th or 7th best team in the league. Right now, they're projected, like, 8th, 9th, where Boston is. But if they overperform a little bit, they're all of a sudden in the middle of the pack. Like, maybe they can compete with Thieves, especially if Thieves are starting the season on a slow note. Yeah, I don't see why Riyadh couldn't win at least one of these first 3 maps. What a tough start, though, for Falcons. Like, you literally get the 2 basically co-favorites to win champs on Friday and on Sunday of opening weekend. So that's a brutal start, but maybe you'd prefer to have it that way, like before these teams really start to get going and figure out what they're good at and not. Yeah, give us the top dogs right away. It's a good measuring stick to see kind of where we are at across the league, because it should only get easier from here for this Falcons team. So if you're Falcons, you're probably starting 0-2 this weekend, but if you can at least keep some maps close, pick off a map here or there, just keep things interesting versus these top teams, I think you'd be happy. So if you can somehow win one of the matches, even better. But yeah, just hope that maybe they can keep something close, not get swept, that sort of a thing. And I think they definitely have the players to do, but maybe it'll take a little while for them to gel. But I don't know, man. Crazier things have happened.
Yeah, no, it's true. Maybe this could be a competitive game. We'll have to see. Second last match, Paris versus FaZe. This seems like a wrong line here. This seems like Paris should be maybe a bigger favorite in this one. Paris minus 25 on the money line, FaZe plus 162, Paris minus 1.5 plus 100, FaZe plus 1.5 minus 138. Yeah, I think I'm on Paris. I'd be on Paris on this one. Yeah, it's weird how I'm like FaZe should be closer to Thieves, but also Paris should be better than them. Maybe the play here is just play Paris this weekend and see how good they are.
Yeah, I thought about that. I don't know, man. This is tough because part of me is this could be the cheapest you get FaZe all year, and it's just based on some preseason tournaments where, right, when you're so early in the season, like, you're still trying to figure out how you want to play this game, not only as a team, but what maps you want to play on, how to rotate on certain maps, the search and destroy strategy to attacking and defending. There's a lot to figure out early in the game, and we see it a lot of years where there's a team or two that really show up in the first few weeks, and then once teams start to pick up on tendencies and start to figure out the best way to play these maps and these modes, then you see this convergence, and maybe with roster moves, those elite teams that start the year fade a little. But yeah, definitely, like, Paris should be favorites, and like with how FaZe have looked, like, yeah, I think this is a pretty justifiable line. I do just want to buy into the fact that FaZe have really good players, really good coaches. They haven't really shown it yet, but I think just, again, based on that futures preview, like, these two teams should be in the same tier together. These odds seem to indicate that these teams aren't even close right now, which maybe they're not. Maybe FaZe are still a long ways away and it takes a little while, but I can't shake FaZe. Like, I think they are a solid team, a competitive team. I know we haven't seen it yet, but I would rather side with FaZe here. But I could totally see Paris just coming out and doing their thing because they look hard to stop too. I don't know. It's a battle for the color pink, though. That's new.
It is, yes. That is new. But we've not really had pink teams before. We definitely have them now. That will be interesting. I hope they really don't make both teams pink in them. That would be rough. Final match of the weekend. Optic versus G2. Optic minus 12 on the money line. That's a pretty big number for a team that was competitive in the tournament. G2 plus 600. Optic minus 2.5 plus 120. G2 plus 2.5 minus 163. Kind of the play here is G2. I think the play is G2. That seems like a bit too big of a number for a G2 team that's like actually okay. I'm not sure exactly where you play it. Maybe we get some spreads by then. Maybe we use this like a hardpoint spread or a search spread or something. But that number seems a bit too big for me. Minus 1,200 against a team that should be among one of the top half of the league, top 5, top 4, maybe top 6. Like, that number seems a bit too big. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I could see it. I think if Mamba is that guy, like if he comes in and it's, oh yeah, this dude could win Rookie of the Year, G2 is making champs, they're a contender, like G2 could vault themselves into that next tier up with Paris perhaps, or with Toronto. Like, I don't think they're that far off if Mamba is that guy. The issue is that it's Optic, and Optic look almost unstoppable right now. Is the price worth it? I think, yeah, like you make a good case for G2 here. Like, I don't know if it's hardpoint search or overload yet, because we haven't really seen it enough for any of these teams yet. But yeah, it feels like they maybe have enough firepower, and maybe last weekend's tournament, Paris showed the rest of the league, here's how to beat Optic. Like, these are the maps, follow what we do, and maybe you've got a shot to take down Optic, or at least keep things close here. So that was at least good to see that Optic are human, right? They're not going to win every tournament or every match that they play. Can G2 capitalize? Can Falcons capitalize? Perhaps. But Optic does just have so much more talent, and it's going to take a lot for them to lose a series like this. But if Mamba is that guy, and if the rest of this team can gel together quickly, I think, yeah, for sure, they've got a real shot here. It's going to take a lot, but they're live. It's not like Optic versus Surge or anything like that. If you like G2, I don't mind it whatsoever.
Yeah, no, I think that's I think that might be the play here. So I think we'll see from that. Other than that, so now this is going to be a rename segment, Model Warfare. So it's previously called Models versus Markets, but again, going with the whole Call of Duty theme, Model Warfare. That's a great name. I love that name. That's going to be a great name for the rest of this year. I don't have any official picks this week, but you're actually on Cloud9 versus Minnesota. And you're on, yeah, you also picked the Vegas +1.5 versus Thieves and +1.5 versus Paris. So you're betting on Vegas. We're going back to Old Faithful here. You're just like,
Yes.
I don't think Simp is that bad. I don't think Simp is that bad. That's the play here,
Honestly,
right?
yeah, that kind of is a play. Like, this team has good players. I don't want to buy into the preseason stuff too much. I think they're definitely valuable data points, but at the end of the day, I do think FaZe can compete with these guys, and that's all you're asking them to do. Like, just get it to a map 5. You don't even have to win. Just get there. And yeah, the Cloud9 Minnesota thing is more just a play on there's some discrepancy between the futures market and the market for this match, because if the future market is more or less accurate, then I don't think Minnesota should be as big of a favorite as they are. I just figured out, going back to that first preseason tournament, these two teams did meet in the third place game. G2 did win 3-1. So that might be inflating the number just enough. But Cloud9 had a good run at the tournament, finishing in 4th, taking out a couple CDL teams along the way. So it's not like they're off to a slow start either. But G2 definitely look like maybe they're just a cut above. But I think +150 is a good enough number to get on for Cloud9. So those are the 3 I'm going with this week. It's probably the least confident I'll feel all year in any picks. But yeah, the Vegas one is more just like Simp. I think he's all right. And even though those teams are really good, I think FaZe will have something up their sleeve to keep things close.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think we agree on those picks. I think I want to bet a little on Paris, and we'll see. Maybe find some spreads. But yeah, it's a little too early. Again, save your powder, guys. It's going to be a long season. No reason to bet a lot this weekend. Just sit back, enjoy Call of Duty. It's back, and we got a long season ahead of us. Just start taking some notes, seeing what's good and what teams are good and not good, and we'll go from there. That is it for Major 1 Week 2. We will see you back next week for Major 1 Week. That was it for Major 1 Week 1. Major 1 Week 2. That will be next week. We'll be back here. And yeah, other than that, see you everybody. Have a good week. Is there anything else you wanted to add on that?
No,
Or
just, yeah, like you said, just enjoy the games this weekend. It's been a little while since we've had some COD. It'll be the first league matches of Black Ops 7, so always fun to see an opening weekend. And yeah, I'm sure we'll learn a lot about these teams over the next 9 matches.
yeah, for sure. All right, see you everybody, and we'll see you next week.